I'm on board.
Next.
Next is Joe. How you doing?
Fine. How are you?
We're good.
All right.
What's up, Joe?
I think you made a comment a minute ago that may have given me a little insight, but here's my position. Who cares what others believe as long as they don't injure me and others and start wars?
I think that's great, and I would agree with that were it not for the real world in which we live, in which people do act upon the most lunatic of beliefs, which are the kinds of beliefs that do injure others and start wars. The guys who crashed planes into the World Trade Center did so with a belief that they were doing what Allah wanted, that they were doing, that they were doing what they needed to do to avenge perceived injustices to their own country.
Well, I care what he believes, but what about the regular guy driving down the street? I don't care whether he's Catholic or Jew or what, as long as he doesn't try to impose his religion on me or lash out because I don't believe what he believes.
And we're with you on that.
Yeah, for the most part, and I talked about this a little bit at the end of the lecture, for the most part, I'm with you. Generally, my rights end where other people's begin, and it's the same for all of them.
Okay.
However, we do protect people from harming themselves. I mean, if they're demonstrably crazy, if they believe that they can leap off buildings and fly, we're probably going to lock them up for their own good.
And taking little children to church is like teaching them the Grimm's fairy tales.
Yeah, the thing is that, and this is one of the points that I made, beliefs are important for two reasons. One, they inform your actions.
Okay.
And two, they inform your future beliefs. Because there's a process your brain goes through in deciding whether or not something is true, whether or not you accept it. And if you begin to accept things that aren't true for bad reasons, you're more likely to accept other things that aren't true for bad reasons.
You get off the track and open the doors to a lot of other nonsense.
Right. Mm-hmm. So while I respect everybody's right to believe as their conscience dictates, and how could we do otherwise? We can't really mandate what somebody believes. I'm still. It's like people ask if we're trying to deconvert people. That's not a prime objective of the show. I'm happy when and if it happens, because I'd rather live in a world where everybody embraced reality and that we can come to kind of common understanding of that shared reality.
But you're right. I'm sorry.
I went from Presbyterian to Unitarian to Hitchens.
Okay.
That's my religious transformation.
There you go. Just follow that path.
Yeah.
What do you mean, little joke? No.
No. Inasmuch as I think with the average person where their beliefs are fundamentally benign, it's all right. But then there are different also degrees of harm, right?
Agreed.
For example, that presumably benign guy, the benign Presbyterian who is just driving down the freeway next to you, minding his own business, may at the same time be the sort of person who would cast his votes at the ballot in favor, for example, of educational policies that inappropriately introduced religion into science curriculum, that sort of thing.
He could be a Ku Klux Klaner without a hood.
He could, that's a higher degree of malignity. But even to a certain degree, people who have ostensibly really, really benign beliefs might still do or act upon those beliefs in ways that they might not recognize or that might not be obviously harmful.
They're potentially dangerous to society and don't even know it.
Yeah, and other people may not even realize it.
And I think so. That's why it's important to have, for example, shows like ours where these things are discussed. Because sure, it's one thing to strap a bomb to yourself and blow someone up based on beliefs, but it's a much milder thing, but not equally, but still potentially with long-term effects that are very pernicious. When you're doing things like, out of all innocence saying, well, what's wrong with having, creationism in science class?
I'll
Well,
shut up. I wish you guys had a bigger audience. Thank you.
Well, we've got a big worldwide one so far. So, to a certain degree, I think that, we need this kind of open discussion and forum because, some beliefs are benign, some are extremely malign, and then there's a whole big gray area in between.
Yeah.
That's
and what Joe called in and talked about was, somebody's beliefs are irrelevant as long as their actions are sane. And I guess I'd say that you can't really separate the two.
No.
Your beliefs matter. Yeah. I really wish it was possible, to just not worry at all about what other people believe. But
we can't do that because we're a social species.
We're forced to live together.
We're always interacting.
what you do affects me in ways that you don't know, and what I do affects you in ways that I probably don't realize.
And we've already had one example in the last week of someone who is acting irrationally based on, based on what he thinks his atheism requires him to do.
His particular.
Yeah, his
particular religion, which
his approach to atheism,
which is I'm right, and anybody who says I'm wrong needs to be sued into oblivion.
Which I think is probably more narcissism than sort of a religious thing. But it's
anyway.
But he justifies.
He who shall not be named
uses his atheism to justify it.